Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. And with me is a very special guest, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Maldives, Mr. Abdulla Shahid, to talk about bilateral, regional and global issues of interest or concern to both Malé and New Delhi. Now, recently he was elected as the President of the 76th United Nations General Assembly. He is the first Maldivian to hold the position, and this is his first official visit to any country since becoming the President-elect. Mr. Minister, congratulations and welcome once again in New Delhi, and thank you for making time for us here at DD India.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Good to see you, Mr. Minister. Let me start with your recent election win as the President of the UNGA. Now, what would be some of your priorities as the President-elect? And what would you hope to achieve by the end of your term?
I came in promising a Presidency of Hope. I chose the theme, Presidency of Hope, taking into account the challenges that we have gone through in the last 1.5 years. The economic devastation, the social limitations, the restrictions on movement, the psychological trauma, the death and devastation that we have seen. It has brought in a time where people have started losing hope. And it is of my view that this is a time when world leaders should get together and lift the population and give people hope. Yes, we have seen such devastation during the year, as we have never seen for centuries. But some good came out of it. We have seen little actions of kindness, of courage from frontline workers, from health workers, and many, many others, which we have not seen for centuries.
Indeed.
It has brought the best of humanity. We have been able to come out with a vaccine in miracle time. These are things that we should celebrate. These are things that has brought hope. This is where we have seen light at the end of the tunnel. And that is why I chose a Presidency of Hope. And during a Presidency of Hope, I want to address 5 issues.
Sure.
And I termed it as 5 rays of hope. Recovering from COVID-19, rebuilding sustainably, responding to the needs of the planet, respecting the rights of all, and reforming the United Nations. If I am able to address to these very pressing 5 issues with the 5 rays of hope that I am submitting to the membership of the United Nations, then I think we will come out of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly a much more hopeful world.
Mr. Minister, you spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic. There are many other challenges confronting the world as we speak, including environment, for instance. And one of the first major summits lined up towards the end of this year is the COP26. Now, in your estimation, especially because Maldives is vulnerable to climate change, how crucial is this issue for you personally and for Maldives in general?
Well, for Maldives as a small island state, and for many, many other small island states, the issue of environment is the issue of survival.
Right.
We go to bed, we wake up thinking about it. We live through it. And as a President of the General Assembly, coming from one of the smallest island nations in the world, it is going to be one of my priorities. COP26 is going to be a watershed conference. We are going into COP26 with much hopes. The United Nations re-engagement with the environmental issues has brought an element of hope, of expectation, at least from the small island states. We want the COP26 to be a conference where we would see results, action. We are hopeful that we will be able to reach the $100 billion target for the as expected. We want to see more financing available for adaptation and mitigation. We want the countries to come out with a more stronger political declaration that they are willing to come down to the 1.5 degree target.
Mr. Minister, talking about the COVID-19 pandemic now, how is Maldives coping with the pandemic? How is the vaccination in the country coming along?
We initially we were forced to close our borders, which made the pandemic a health crisis as well as an economic crisis. Right. You would know that the Maldives depends on tourism heavily, and for us to have our borders closed is like becoming a no-income country. We were forced to close our borders for 3 months with strict guidelines and strict protocols. We reopened the borders. The tourism sector started picking up. We were able to get the vaccine rollout at the very initial stage. You would recall that within 48 hours of the Indian vaccine rollout, India was very generous to send vaccines to the Maldives. 200,000 vaccines at the initial phase, and we started the rollout. We have been very lucky to this extent. However, when the Delta virus hit us, it made a huge negative impact. The number of people who died due to COVID during the 2 months of the height of the Delta variant was much more than the entire year before. We had lost so many during that period. But very strict measures, we have been able to bring the situation under control. Numbers have decreased enormously. The country has been able to come back to a degree of normalcy. But it's a new normalcy. We have been lucky to continue with the vaccination program. We have been able to vaccinate about 73% of the population with the first dose, 58% with the 2 doses. So the vaccination is high. The movements are slowly opening up. However, this virus is a very strange virus. Wave after wave of virus is hitting all countries. So we can't let our guard down. Absolutely. We have to be on alert.
Mr. Minister, as the President-elect of the United Nations General Assembly, do you have a view on the origin and spread of the coronavirus? The WHO, for instance, is calling for a new study on the origins of the virus. So do you have a view as the President-elect or as the Foreign Minister of the Maldives? As
President-elect, I do not have a view. I think it should be the experts who should come up with this. For the President of the General Assembly or the Foreign Minister of the Maldives to prejudge on these things would be very dangerous.
Is a study warranted in your estimation? That there is a need to go into how the virus originated and spread so quickly to all corners of the world?
We should not stop exploring into this pandemic in order to prevent future pandemics. I think we should do everything possible to make sure that we deal with this pandemic properly and learn lessons so that in the future we would all be better prepared. We have seen the loss and the pain that this has brought in.
And talking about learning lessons, Mr. Minister, I want to shift your focus to another incident that took place in the Maldives on the 6th of May. That's the attack on the life of Speaker Mohamed, the former president. Is the probe over or is it still on? And has Maldives made any headway into establishing the conspiracy or the persons who are actually behind carrying out this attack?
As I understand, the investigation is ongoing. We have assistance from international experts, from the Federal Police of Australia, the United Kingdom, and also the United States. Such acts of violence can only be properly investigated with international assistance. And I think for a country like the Maldives, we are very grateful that the assistance was so prompt in coming, and we will make sure that we deal with this investigation properly.
So do you have a timeline in mind for the conclusion of this investigation?
Our penal code has these timelines, and the investigators, the police, will have to abide by these timelines.
And President Soley himself spoke about auditing the national security apparatus. So how is that coming along in the light of this May 6th incident?
For any country, such an attack warrants an examination, an internal examination of where we are and what can be improved. And I think it's very appropriate that President Soley has so quickly asked this audit to be done. And as soon as the audit is finished, I think we'll have to address whatever shortcomings that we have. This is something that in any democratic society needs to happen. We have to open ourselves to find out what went wrong, if any.
Just one quick follow-up question. It's a twofold question. Speaker Nasheed wrote most recently on 17th July, where he referred to the issue or the threat or the challenge posed by extremism in the Maldives. And he said that the government of Maldives, in his words, these are his words, not mine, pandering to extremists. That's number one. Number two, Speaker Nasheed has often in the past spoken about reforming the mode of government in Maldives. He favors a parliamentary democracy as opposed to a presidential form of government. Now, he's made a number of suggestions in the last several months, including cancelling the 2023 presidential poll, allowing lawmakers to run the country till the next election and also hold until the next parliamentary election in 2024. So could you just give us a sense of where things stand on these two issues, fighting extremism, including the withdrawal of the bill most recently by President Soley, and also Speaker Nasheed's idea of reforming the way Maldives is run, generally speaking?
On extremism, this government is fully committed to deal with the issue of extremism. Yes, we have inherited certain shortcomings of the previous regime, which pandered to extremism. They refused to open their eyes to the reality. However, this government was very clear on where we stand. We have been the only government in place since the adoption of the anti-terrorism law, which has clearly in the open listed the organizations which Maldivian government sees as terrorist organizations. The previous governments have had not the courage of saying
thus far and no further.
Yes, an apple is an apple or an orange is an orange. We did. We are going to make sure that we deal with this comprehensively. The government did not withdraw the bill. The members of parliament has referred it to a committee, and the committee is going to review it. It's a parliamentary process which government, as a democratic government and as a presidential system, government has submitted the bill. It's up to the members of the parliament to decide on what changes that they bring to the bill. Many of the bills that have been submitted by the government have been revised by parliamentarians. However, it's the initiative of the government to submit this bill to address this issue of extremism. Government is resolute in making sure that we deal with this And it's also an issue where we need a national consensus. If parties and individuals have differing opinions on such issues as extremism, we can't deal in a comprehensive manner. Whether you are in opposition or in government, politically responsible people should come together and come to a national consensus to give a clear statement that there is no room for extremism in the Maldives. Unless that is done, there will always be gray areas. It's not time to point fingers or accuse each other, but to come together on these major national issues. And this government is open for such a national consensus against extremism. On the form of government, the constitution, when it was drawn up in 2008, there was a referendum which was initiated by MDP within the Constitutional Assembly at that time. And 68% of Maldivian people at that time said that they would prefer a republican, a parliamentary, a presidential system. The parliamentary system did not carry weight at that time. The constitution is very clear on how a change could be brought, and it's up to the parliamentarians to initiate this. And I think the people will decide.
Mr. Minister, how would you describe Maldives-India relations today? What's the state of play? Or what's the next big idea in the relationship? Are there any visits being lined up or any other engagement going forward?
Well, Maldives and India has never had this level of engagement and relationship. We have, with President Saleh in office, we have been able to elevate the relationship to a new height. It's consolidated. It has come about because of the mutual understanding between the leaders at the very highest level. Prime Minister Modi was in Maldives for President Saleh's inauguration. President Saleh was here in Delhi within a month of his inauguration. The trust and confidence, the respect that both have to each other has made sure that this relationship is founded on solid ground. And what has followed since the inauguration of President Saleh's government is very clear on record. Little things to very large things. Little things which shows a highest degree of humanity. During the pandemic, for example, when all borders were closed, India was the only country that Maldivians could travel for medical and other reasons. India was the only country which so generously kept the flow of medical requirements, and India assisted us in budget support and in so many ways. We have been able to make sure that this relationship flourishes in good times and in bad times. And that's just a gist of how things have been.
And talking about medical tourism, Mr. Minister, for instance, there is a proposal which the government of India has also mooted and shared with Maldives, that of the opening of a consulate in Audit. Has the government taken a view on that?
We are, Maldivian current government is a government of engagement. We have a Maldivian consulate here in India, in Bangalore. We have our High Commission here in Delhi, and the consulate that has been proposed for Audit has been under review, and I'm sure that a decision will be taken very soon.
And finally, Mr. Minister, talking about regional issues, now Maldives and India both members of SAARC, but SAARC has been in limbo for quite some time now. do you see a revival of the SAARC anytime soon in the future? And do you have any view at all on India's actually looking and acting east in favor of the BIMSTEC at the expense, some would say, of SAARC?
SAARC came about with great expectation. I was a young foreign service officer when it, at its inception. I could still feel the expectations that us foreign service officers and larger South Asian population head towards SAARC. But SAARC needs to address the core issues that are preventing it from moving ahead. Unless they are addressed, I do not see SAARC coming around. But
the problem from Maldives' perspective, as I see it, that we are members of India and Maldives are members of SAARC, but Maldives is not a member of BIMSTEC. So if SAARC is in a moribund state, BIMSTEC is flourishing, but then how does Maldives see this? Maldives is a country which, this government is a government which is looking for engagement. We were very pleased that as soon as President Solly's government was inaugurated, the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association, welcomed Maldives as a member. Since President Solly's government, we have applied for membership of Agreement on Amity and Cooperation, the ASEAN, as an observer. We are also interested in applying for observer status at BIMSTEC. We will not limit ourselves. We are ready to be engaging with every organization that we could benefit from. And that is why we have pushed our membership of Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well. And we are very grateful that in the last meeting of foreign ministers, they have agreed that they will move Maldives membership to the next level. So a decision is expected early next year as an observer. Right, on that note, Mr. Minister, thank you once again for making time for us here at DD India. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure. And with that, it's a wrap. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.